The room goes silent the second they walk in. Nobody announces them, nobody tells people to behave, and yet somehow everyone adjusts. Conversations soften, jokes get filtered, the energy changes without a single word being spoken. You know someone like that? Maybe it is the quiet guy at work nobody dares disrespect. Maybe it is that woman in your family everyone suddenly becomes careful around. Maybe it is someone you passed once in public and instantly felt there was something different about them. Not louder. Not tougher. Just untouchable. And meanwhile, there are people who spend their whole lives being talked over, ignored, used, dismissed, underestimated. People who are kind, smart, hardworking, genuine, yet somehow they keep ending up in the same exhausting cycle where others slowly chip away at their peace. And here is the dangerous part. Most of them never realize why it keeps happening. They blame confidence. They blame looks. They blame status. Money. Luck. Charisma. But the truth is far simpler than that. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it again. Because the difference between the person who gets respected and the person who constantly gets tested usually comes down to one invisible thing. What energy they allow people to get away with around them. That is it. Not what they say. Not what they post online. Not how nice they are. What they tolerate. And the terrifying thing about tolerance is that people learn it fast. Human beings are constantly studying each other without realizing it. Every conversation, every reaction, every silence is information. People are watching for emotional boundaries the same way drivers watch for road signs. They want to know, how far can I go here? What happens if I disrespect this person? Will there be consequences? Will they speak up? Will they stay quiet just to keep things comfortable? And the answer you give becomes your identity in their mind. That is why one sarcastic comment turns into 10. One canceled plan becomes constant disrespect. One moment of silence becomes a pattern that follows you for years. Because every time you ignore something that hurts you just to avoid tension, you quietly train people that your boundaries are flexible. And once people believe your boundaries are flexible, they stop treating them like boundaries at all. Most people never notice when this process begins. It happens in tiny moments. A joke that crossed the line. A friend embarrassing you in public. Someone interrupting you constantly. A coworker speaking to you with subtle disrespect. A person who only calls when they need something. And each time you tell yourself the same lie. It is not worth making awkward. So you smile. Laugh it off. Swallow it. Move on. But your silence spoke louder than words ever could. Because silence teaches people too. And the lesson sounded like this. You can do that to me and nothing will happen. That sentence alone ruins more confidence than failure ever will. Because eventually it spreads everywhere. People sense it before you even speak. The strange thing about human behavior is that confidence is contagious, but weakness is too. Energy leaks through posture, tone, hesitation, eye contact, reaction speed. Most people cannot explain what they are sensing, but they still respond to it unconsciously. That is why some people get tested immediately. Not because they deserve it. Not because they are bad. But because their energy says, I am afraid to lose your approval. And the moment people sense fear of disapproval, the power balance changes. Everything changes. You start over-explaining. Apologizing for things that require no apology. Accepting treatment you secretly hate. Trying harder for people who barely try for you. And eventually you wake up exhausted because your entire personality has become built around managing other people's comfort instead of protecting your own peace. That is not kindness. That is survival mode. And survival mode destroys self-respect slowly, quietly, invisibly. Let me explain this another way. Imagine two houses during winter. In the first house, there is only a thermometer. The thermometer reads the temperature perfectly. If the room gets cold, it shows cold. If it gets hot, it shows hot. It reacts to whatever environment surrounds it. It has awareness, but no control. Now imagine the second house. This one has a thermostat. The thermostat does not ask the room what temperature it should become. It decides first. then the room adjusts around that decision. That is the difference between people who command respect and people who constantly lose themselves trying to keep everyone happy. Most people live like thermometers. They walk into rooms absorbing energy. If someone is cold toward them, they shrink. If someone seems annoyed, they panic. If someone disapproves of them, they instantly try to fix it. They spend their entire lives emotionally reacting to everyone else. But powerful people move differently. They are thermostats. They decide who they are before the interaction even begins. That is why calm people feel powerful. Not because they dominate the room. Because the room cannot emotionally move them. And when people realize they cannot emotionally control you, something strange happens. They start respecting you automatically. Because emotional stability is rare. Especially today. Most people are addicted to reactions. They poke, test, provoke, manipulate, complain, judge, just to see if they can move your emotional state. And the second they realize they cannot, their behavior changes completely. But here is where people get confused. They think being respected means becoming aggressive. So they start trying to sound intimidating. Cold, emotionless, detached. That is not strength. That is armor. Real power is quieter than that. Real power is calm eye contact. Short answers. Comfortable silence. The ability to leave disrespectful situations without needing revenge. The ability to say no without guilt. The ability to disappoint people without collapsing emotionally afterward. That is real freedom. Because the strongest people in the world are usually not the loudest people in the room. They are the least emotionally controlled. And that changes everything. Especially relationships. One of the biggest lies ever taught is that being endlessly available makes people value you more. It does the opposite. Think about this carefully. If somebody knew they could call you anytime, cancel on you anytime, disrespect you anytime, ignore you for weeks, come back whenever they want, and still have full access to your time and energy, why would they ever feel pressure to treat you carefully? Human beings naturally protect what feels limited. That is why rare things feel valuable. And when your attention becomes unlimited, people unconsciously stop respecting it. Not because you are worthless. Because you removed all cost from accessing you. That is why people pleasers suffer so much emotionally. Not because they care too much. Because they abandon themselves trying to be loved. They say yes while exhausted. Stay quiet while hurt. Give while empty. Accept less while pretending it is enough. And eventually resentment builds quietly underneath everything. Because deep down they know the truth. They are betraying themselves for acceptance. The painful part is this usually comes from good people. Empathetic people. Loyal people. Sensitive people. But sensitivity without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You cannot pour endlessly into people who never refill you. At some point, self-respect has to become stronger than fear of losing people. And that requires one terrifying skill. Speaking up early. Not after months of resentment. Not after exploding emotionally. Not after rehearsing imaginary arguments in your head for 3 days. Immediately. Because timing matters. The longer disrespect sits unchallenged, the more normal it becomes. That is why one small habit can completely change your life. The 5-second rule. The moment something feels wrong, you respond within 5 seconds. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Clearly. What did you mean by that? I do not appreciate that. Talk to me differently. That did not sit right with me. Simple. Direct. Calm. That is all. Because after 5 seconds, your brain begins negotiating against your own self-respect. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe they did not mean it. Maybe this will create tension. Maybe I should stay quiet. And once your brain starts protecting comfort instead of truth, the moment disappears. But when you respond immediately, something powerful happens. People recalibrate around you instantly. Because now they understand. This person notices things. This person has standards. This person will speak. And most disrespect disappears the second people realize there is a line. Not because they are scared of you. Because clear boundaries create clarity. The problem is most people wait until they are emotionally boiling before they finally say something. And by then, it comes out as anger instead of honesty. But healthy boundaries are not emotional explosions. They are small corrections made early. Quiet confidence. That is why truly respected people often seem so relaxed. They are not carrying years of swallowed resentment. They deal with things in real time. And over time, this changes your entire identity. You stop chasing validation. Stop over-explaining. Stop trying to convince people to choose you. Stop begging for basic respect. You become harder to manipulate because you are no longer desperate to be liked by everyone. And ironically, that is usually when people start respecting you most. Because desperation repels. Calm certainty attracts. Now here is the deeper layer nobody talks about. None of this works unless you fix the belief underneath it all. Because every behavior comes from identity. If deep down you secretly believe, I am lucky people tolerate me. I should accept whatever love I can get. If I speak up, everyone will leave. I am hard to love. Then no strategy will save you. You will keep abandoning yourself automatically. That hidden belief becomes your emotional ceiling. And nobody rises above the ceiling they secretly believe they deserve. That is why some people constantly end up in toxic friendships, disrespectful relationships, manipulative workplaces. Not because they want pain. Because pain feels familiar. And familiar feels safe. Read that again. Familiar feels safe. Even when it hurts. So the real transformation begins when you stop asking, how do I make people respect me? And start asking, why have I been accepting less than respect in the first place? That question changes everything. Because once your self-worth rises internally, boundaries stop feeling scary. They start feeling natural. You stop forcing confidence because you no longer need performance. You know your value quietly. And quiet self-worth is one of the most intimidating energies on earth. Not arrogance. Not ego. Certainty. The kind that does not need applause. The kind that does not beg. The kind that can walk away peacefully. That is real power. And once you build it, people feel it immediately. You enter rooms differently. You speak differently. You tolerate less. You protect your peace faster. You stop shrinking around difficult personalities. You stop trying to rescue people who enjoy draining you. Most importantly, you stop betraying yourself just to keep temporary connection. Because eventually you realize something heartbreaking. Every time you abandon your own boundaries to keep someone else comfortable, you slowly teach yourself that your feelings matter less. And no amount of motivation can fix a life built on self-abandonment. But the opposite is true too. Every single time you honor your standards, every time you speak honestly, every time you leave a disrespectful situation, every time you choose peace over approval, you rebuild trust with yourself. And self-trust changes everything. Because once you trust yourself, people's opinions lose power over you. Rejection loses power. Criticism loses power. Manipulation loses power. You become emotionally difficult to control. And emotionally uncontrollable people are almost impossible to break. So here is what I want you to do after this video ends. Think of one situation in your life right now where you have been shrinking yourself to keep the peace. One person. One friendship. One relationship. One workplace. One repeating pattern. Now ask yourself honestly, what would the version of me with self-respect do next time? Not the angry version. Not the revenge version. The calm version. The clear version. The version that no longer abandons themselves for approval. Decide now. Before the moment happens. Because confidence is not built in comfort. It is built in moments where you finally choose yourself instead of fear. And the truth is, the moment you stop rewarding disrespect with access, your entire life begins changing. Not everyone will like it. Some people benefited from your lack of boundaries. Some people liked the version of you that stayed silent. Some people preferred when you tolerated everything. Let them be uncomfortable. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable around you. Your job is to stop making yourself uncomfortable just to earn temporary acceptance. That is where peace begins. That is where respect begins. And that is where your real power starts.